Anna Carrino was born in 1982 into a world where loyalty, power, and fear governed every decision. Growing up in the shadows of Chicago's most notorious crime families, she had a front-row seat to the gritty, dangerous reality of life in the Mafia. Her father, Tony Carrino, was a feared and respected mob boss, known for his ruthless nature and sharp mind. He ran one of the most influential syndicates in the city, with his hands in everything from extortion and racketeering to drug trafficking. To the outside world, the Carrino family appeared to be a picture of wealth and sophistication, with their mansions, luxury cars, and high-status connections. But behind the opulence lay a much darker truth. From the moment Anna could understand the world around her, she was aware of the tension that hung in the air. Her father's associates, men in sharp suits and dark sunglasses, came and went constantly, discussing matters in low voices and casting wary glances over their shoulders. Her mother, a quiet and reserved woman, kept to herself, never saying much about the family business, but Anna could sense that she too was living in constant fear. For all the material wealth, their lives were perpetually marked by the knowledge that everything could come crashing down at any moment. Despite the danger, Anna was captivated by the world she was born into. She would often watch from the sidelines as her father and his men gathered around the kitchen table late at night, talking about business deals, enemies, and opportunities. It wasn't long before she began to absorb their way of thinking. Quick decision-making, strategic planning, and above all, maintaining an unwavering loyalty to the family. Anna's natural intelligence made her stand out even among the hardened criminals in her father's crew. While most of them relied on force or intimidation, she quickly learned the power of words and manipulation. By the time she was in her early teens, Anna was already running errands for her father, passing messages between members of the syndicate and handling some of the less risky side operations. She could keep her mouth shut, read people with a glance, and solve problems before they even became issues. Her mind was sharp, and she realized that it wasn't just about muscle, it was about strategy. At the same time, Anna began to notice the cracks in the facade of her seemingly perfect life. The wealth, the power, and the respect didn't come without a price. She saw firsthand the toll the Mafia took on people. Friends of her father vanished without a trace, their names erased from existence as if they had never mattered. Rivals were eliminated with brutal efficiency, and there was always the lingering fear that betrayal could come from anyone, even those closest to her. Still, Anna remained undeterred. She was part of this world now, and there was no turning back. She could sense that her destiny was already written in the blood of the streets, and the choices she made would either elevate her. Her father, Tony, was no fool. He watched his daughter closely, proud of her sharp mind, but wary of how it might one day be used. There was a quiet understanding between them. Anna was his future. He began to slowly introduce her to the more serious aspects of the family business. She learned how to negotiate with rivals, how to balance the delicate power dynamics that kept the Mafia's operations running smoothly. By the time Anna reached her 20s, she was no longer just Tony Carrino's daughter. She was becoming an integral part of the family's empire, taking on increasingly important roles that positioned her as a potential successor. The streets of Chicago were dangerous, and Anna knew that power was fleeting, but she was willing to fight for her place at the top. She had the drive, the intellect, and the ambition to make it, and she wasn't about to let anyone stand in her way. Little did she know, however, that her rise within the family would soon attract the attention of the authorities, and that her connection to the underworld would shape the rest of her life in ways she could never have imagined. By her late 20s, Anna Carrino had firmly cemented her place within the Mafia world. What started as small tasks for her father had grown into major responsibilities that shaped the direction of the family's operations. Her rise through the ranks wasn't just due to her sharp mind. It was her ability to navigate the complexities of the criminal underworld with a level of poise and strategy that few could match. While most members of the syndicate relied on brute force or intimidation to maintain their status, Anna understood that power was more than just muscle. It was about control, perception, and knowing when to strike and when to lay low. The Carrino family's influence in Chicago had grown exponentially under Anna's watch. The old-school methods of bootlegging, extortion, and gambling remained the backbone of the business, but Anna saw the future in diversification. She expanded the family's reach into more modern criminal enterprises, including cybercrime, money laundering, and arms trafficking. While the older members of the family were reluctant to embrace new ventures, Anna's persuasive tactics slowly won them over. She became the bridge between the old guard and the future of the organization, using her intellect and charm to bring in new partners and expand the syndicate's portfolio. It was during this period that Anna's reputation began to spread. She became known as a woman who not only had the smarts to make a deal, but also the ruthlessness to see it through. Her influence began to extend beyond Chicago's streets as she forged connections with powerful figures in other major cities. Criminal syndicates across the country sought her expertise, hoping to gain favor with the Carrino family. Anna's ability to manage both high-level business deals and street-level enforcers was unmatched. She wasn't just running a criminal empire, she was building a legacy. However, as her power grew, so did the scrutiny. The authorities had been investigating the Carrino family for years, but they had never been able to make any significant headway. Anna's careful, meticulous approach kept the heat off her for the time being. She knew how to keep her hands clean, operating through a network of loyal lieutenants and never getting directly involved in the most incriminating aspects of the business. But the pressure was building. More and more, the FBI and local law enforcement were circling, inching closer to breaking through the Carrino family's veil of secrecy. The tipping point came when Anna ordered a series of moves that would prove to be her greatest challenge yet. The rival Moretti family, a longtime competitor, had begun encroaching on Carrino territory, trying to muscle in on several lucrative rackets that Anna had overseen. Tensions between the two families had been simmering for months, and Anna saw an opportunity to deal with the threat once and for all. The plan was simple: eliminate the Moretti leaders in one swift, strategic strike, sending a message that no one could take what was hers. But things didn't go as planned. The operation was meant to be a clean hit, fast and decisive. Instead, it ended in chaos. A member of Anna's crew, a trusted lieutenant, panicked during the attack and opened fire prematurely, setting off a chain reaction that led to the deaths of innocent bystanders. News of the botched operation spread quickly, attracting the attention of both law enforcement and rival gangs. The Moretti family, furious at the Carrino family's audacity, retaliated with their own violence, igniting a bloody war that would send shockwaves through the city. The Carrino family's operations began to crumble under the pressure. Members were arrested, associates turned state's witnesses, and the media painted Anna as the mastermind behind the failed hit. What had once been a well-oiled machine was now in disarray, and Anna found herself facing an enemy much more dangerous than any rival gang: time. The FBI, who had been patiently watching her every move, finally started to close in. Despite her brilliance in managing the syndicate, the mounting evidence and growing number of informants made it clear that Anna's days at the top were numbered. The final blow came when one of her closest allies, Marco, was arrested during a routine sting operation. Marco wasn't just another soldier in the family. He had been Anna's confidant, someone she trusted with her life. His betrayal shook her to the core. The authorities now had a direct link to Anna, and the walls were closing in faster than she could anticipate. She realized then that the very empire she had built might soon come crashing down, and with it, her life. As Anna's mind began to churn, calculating the risks and the options she had left. Her loyalty to the Carrino family was unwavering, but the cost of that loyalty had never seemed higher. The time for action was running out. She knew that in the world she had helped create, survival came at the expense of everything: loyalty, family, and even her own conscience. But Anna was nothing if not a survivor, and for the first time, survival might mean turning against the very people who had made her who she was. Anna's world, once defined by control and power, began to unravel in ways she hadn't anticipated. Marco's arrest was the tipping point, the beginning of a series of events that would push her to reconsider everything she had built. Marco had been more than just an ally. He was a childhood friend, someone she trusted implicitly. They had grown up together in the same dangerous world, sharing secrets and dreams of a future where the Carrino family would reign supreme. His betrayal hit Anna harder than she could have imagined. He wasn't just an informant. He was someone who had known her vulnerabilities, her fears, and her ambitions. In the aftermath of Marco's arrest, Anna felt the weight of the decisions she had made. The Carrino family's empire, once so powerful, was beginning to crumble from the inside out. Members of her crew were flipping to save themselves, and the FBI was closing in with relentless pressure. The more Anna tried to control the situation, the more it slipped through her fingers. Her father Tony had always taught her that loyalty was everything, yet, in the face of betrayal, Anna started questioning that very principle. What was loyalty worth when it led to her own destruction? The turning point came one rainy afternoon when Anna sat in her father's office, staring at the chaotic mess of operations that she had once managed so flawlessly. The phone calls, the meetings, the deals, it was all starting to feel hollow. What was the point of all the power if it came at the cost of everything she cared about? The constant threat of violence, the never-ending battle to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. It was exhausting. She knew the authorities were getting closer, the walls were closing in. Anna understood that the life she had built was now a ticking time bomb, and the only way to avoid the inevitable explosion was to make a drastic decision. The idea of flipping had always been unthinkable. She had watched other Mafia members turn state's witness, and the idea of betraying her family, of turning on the only world she had ever known, seemed impossible. But now, as the pressure mounted and the options grew slimmer, the idea began to form. She knew that if she didn't act quickly, she would be caught in the web of her own making. The very loyalty she had built her empire on was now the thing that threatened to destroy her. At first, the meetings were tentative. Anna was cautious, unwilling to give too much away. She had seen how the FBI operated, and she knew that they couldn't be trusted either. But as the weight of her decisions bore down on her, she began to open up, one piece of information at a time. She told them about the family's structure, the inner workings of their operations, and the key players in their network. The more she revealed, the more valuable she became to the authorities. They promised her protection, a new life, but Anna knew that promises from the government were not always reliable. She was playing a dangerous game, and every move she made could either save her or lead to her downfall. As the months passed, Anna's involvement with the FBI deepened. She became their inside source, feeding them information that led to a string of arrests within the Carrino family. Her testimony was crucial in taking down some of the most dangerous figures in Chicago's criminal underworld. But the more she helped, the more she realized the gravity of what she was doing. Her name was becoming synonymous with betrayal. She could no longer walk the streets of Chicago without fearing for her life. The Mafia had a long memory, and Anna knew that her past would always haunt her. The choice to flip wasn't just about saving herself. It was about survival. But survival came at a high cost. Every time Anna looked in the mirror, she saw the person she used to be slipping away. The power, the wealth, the respect. All of it was gone. In its place was a woman who had lost everything, including the loyalty to the very people who had once been her family. The decision was made. There was no going back. And now, as the FBI took down one criminal operation after another, Anna Carrino realized that her life would never be the same again. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and in doing so, she had sealed her fate. As Anna Carrino's involvement with the FBI deepened, she found herself caught between two conflicting realities. On one hand, she was now a powerful informant. Her knowledge of the Carrino family's operations was invaluable to law enforcement. On the other hand, she had become a pariah in the criminal underworld. The loyalty that had once fueled her rise to the top now marked her as a traitor. And she was fully aware that once her role as an informant became known, her life would be in immediate danger. It was a paradox she had never imagined facing, and yet it was the only way to secure her future. Anna's decision to flip was not an easy one, and the consequences began to ripple through her life in ways she hadn't expected. She had spent years building the Carrino empire, cultivating power and respect. The idea of destroying it from the inside felt almost unthinkable. Yet, as she continued to feed the FBI crucial information, names, dates, locations, and operations, she saw the Mafia's grip on Chicago start to slip. One by one, the people she had once called family were arrested, and the city that had once been her kingdom now felt foreign and dangerous. The deeper Anna went into the FBI's world, the more she realized just how precarious her situation was. The law enforcement agents she had been working with were professional, but Anna had learned long ago that trust was a luxury few could afford in her world. She had heard horror stories of informants who thought they were safe, only to be hunted down once their usefulness had run its course. Anna knew that her protection, while promised, was never truly guaranteed. The Mafia did not forgive, and her father's legacy of revenge was one she could never escape. Her life became a carefully constructed facade. Anna's once opulent lifestyle was now a distant memory, replaced by the anonymity of witness protection. She was given a new identity, a new life far removed from the streets of Chicago. The transition was jarring. Gone were the days of fine dining, expensive clothes, and lavish parties. Now Anna lived in a modest apartment, cut off from the world she had once known. Every interaction, every gesture was scrutinized. Even something as simple as buying groceries felt like an exercise in survival. The life she had been promised in exchange for her cooperation, the peace and safety, felt distant and unattainable. Despite the fear, there was also a part of Anna that felt a strange sense of freedom. The constant paranoia that had defined her existence was now a thing of the past. She no longer had to look over her shoulder every time she stepped outside, no longer had to worry about a betrayal coming from within her own ranks. But the price of that freedom was high. She had severed ties with her father, with her past, and with the very family she had dedicated her life to protecting. There was no going back to the woman she had been before. Anna Carrino, once a feared Mafia boss, was now a ghost, her past erased, her future uncertain. In the weeks that followed, Anna began to see the true consequences of her actions. The Carrino family was crumbling under the weight of her testimony. Key members were arrested and convicted, and the once mighty syndicate was reduced to a shadow of its former self. Her father, Tony Carrino, whom she had once considered invincible, was facing charges that could put him away for the rest of his life. For a moment, Anna felt a pang of regret. Her father had been a man of the old world. His values, his code, had always been clear. He had raised her to be strong, to be loyal, and to protect the family at all costs. But loyalty had meant betrayal. The more she thought about it, the more she understood that her decision had been the only way forward. If she had remained loyal to the Carrino family, she would have been destroyed, just like the countless others who had refused to turn against the Mafia when the time came. As Anna's involvement with the FBI continued to bring down criminal organizations, she couldn't help but wonder if she had done enough. The damage she had caused to her family's legacy was irreversible, but the destruction of the Carrino empire was just the beginning. Other Mafia families were watching her closely, their eyes fixed on her every move. Anna knew that it wasn't just the law she had to worry about now. It was the Mafia. They would never forget what she had done. The question was no longer whether the law would protect her, but whether she could survive the constant threat of retribution from the very world she had helped destroy. Anna Carrino's life as she knew it had ended. The world she had once conquered had now become a prison, and in that prison the only thing keeping her alive was the thin thread of trust she had placed in the hands of the FBI, a trust that at any moment could be shattered. The clock was ticking, and Anna's new life had become a dangerous game of survival. Years had passed since Anna Carrino made the choice that had forever altered the course of her life. The world she had once known, the Mafia, the power, the wealth, was now a distant memory, something she could only look back on with a mixture of loss and relief. Her father, Tony Carrino, had been convicted on multiple charges, a sentence that had ensured his life behind bars. The Carrino family, once a force to be reckoned with in Chicago, had all but disappeared, dismantled piece by piece by the information Anna had provided. But for all the victories the authorities had scored, Anna had paid a high price. She had given up everything, her family, her identity, her place in the world. Living in witness protection was a life of constant reinvention. She was no longer Anna Carrino, the feared mob boss in the making. Her name, her face, and her history were now carefully buried under layers of falsehoods. She had been given a new identity, a new home, and a new life in a small town far from Chicago. But despite the changes, there were days when the past felt inescapable. The anonymity of witness protection had its perks. She could walk down the street without fearing a bullet in her back, but it also came with an oppressive loneliness. The social connections she had once taken for granted were now out of reach. The family dinners, the loyal associates, even the enemies. Everything that had defined her existence in the Mafia was gone. In its place was a hollow silence. Anna had always been a survivor. She had survived the brutal world of organized crime, the constant pressure of her father's expectations, and the relentless pursuit of law enforcement. But now she was faced with a different kind of survival, living with the consequences of her choices. The weight of her betrayal never fully lifted. Every day she fought the ghosts of her past, her father's wrath, the loyalty she had torn apart, and the countless lives she had ruined with her decision. There were nights when the memories crept back, when she would lie awake, haunted by the faces of those who had paid the ultimate price for her cooperation with the FBI. The small town she had been relocated to offered no solace. It was a place where people minded their own business, where she could blend in and fade into the background. Yet, Anna had never felt more out of place. She was no longer the powerful woman who commanded respect with a look. She was just another face in the crowd, a woman with no past and no future, struggling to find meaning in a life that had been stripped of everything she had once held dear. There were days when she questioned whether she had made the right choice. Had it been worth it? But then there were moments of clarity, when she realized that her survival had come at the expense of something much greater. She had sacrificed the only life she had ever known to escape a future that would have inevitably led to her demise. The Mafia world was a world of violence, betrayal, and constant danger. Anna knew that if she hadn't turned on her family, she would have been just another casualty, another fallen mobster whose name would be forgotten the moment they were gone. Her decision to cooperate with the authorities had given her a second chance at life. It wasn't the life she had expected, but it was life nonetheless. Despite her new existence, Anna remained vigilant. She knew that the Mafia would never forget what she had done. The organization was far-reaching, and word of her betrayal had undoubtedly spread. Every knock on the door, every phone call was a potential threat. But the authorities had kept their word. She had been protected, relocated, and kept under the radar. Yet the fear, the constant anxiety remained. She was always looking over her shoulder, waiting for the moment when someone from her past would find her. The years had not dulled the sharpness of that fear. The Mafia's reach was long, and their vengeance could be cruel and unrelenting. In the quiet of her new life, Anna learned to accept that there was no going back. She had given up too much, and the past was now a weight she carried with her, day in and day out. Her name had become synonymous with betrayal, not just in the criminal world, but in her own mind. She would never forget the look in her father's eyes when he learned of her testimony. She would never forget the men she had helped put behind bars, the men who had once been part of her inner circle, the men who had once trusted her completely. They were gone, and Anna was left to live with the consequences of her actions. As the years passed, Anna's story became one of legend in the criminal world. She was a cautionary tale, an example of the price of betrayal. Some saw her as a hero, a woman who had brought down a criminal empire. Others saw her as a traitor, a woman who had destroyed everything for the sake of self-preservation. But Anna knew that the truth was more complicated. She had made a choice, and that choice had shaped her fate. In the end, survival had been the only thing that mattered. The rest, her family, her power, her identity, was a casualty of the war she had waged, not just against the Mafia, but against herself. And as she sat alone in her quiet apartment, Anna realized that, in the end, her real battle wasn't with the Mafia. It was with the woman she had become.